Chatroom's on.
Chatroom, what's it all about?
Let's start. Morality. Is there still any left?
Life is about choices. Everyone has an opinion. Debate is always good. Let's chat about it. Let's start.
Ngenbingelela nonke makhaya and welcome to the chat room. Lately, people have been concerned with saving the almost extinct rhino. It is said that if this generation does not properly preserve the wildlife that we are entrusted with now, generations after this might never be able to see wildlife. Now, animals play an important part in the environment. Some animals help to assist in the cycle of different nutrients throughout the ecosystem, while others are important because they help to speed up decomposition. Most animals are important because they are part of the food chain and help other animals higher up in the chain to survive. Worldwide, an organization called Save the Rhino International raises about 4 billion rands a year, for instance, and some of that money is given to the nature conservation organizations in Southern Africa. In the same breath, there are people living in poverty. Lack of education and the absence of safe recreation centers also fuel further social problems. In South Africa, less than 5% of households earn 16,000 rands or more a month. This shows that most households have bigger problems concerning their own survival and well-being. Namhlanje on the chat room, we're asking, do these households need to think about saving the animals and trees? Can we justify donating money to save the lives of animals and nature above human lives? Take a look at this insert.
Chatroom's on.
Let's chat about it. Let's start.
Le mali labayifaka lapha kuma rhinos lama millions aba investor la leyo mali leyo kube ibhaya ama transport like amabus khona inxosi esingana icathula into yokuqala ziva long distances baya igel, you know, and kuneinxosi esijampa emifula, you know, bazi esikolweni akunama boats lapha abawathengayo, you understand. And the other thing, kuneinxosi esibhodayo, you know, ziyavela no inxosi isemaplazini ayinayo attention ka doctor, you know, primary health care they should be, you know, investing kuma mobile clinics and stuff like that, you know, ukuthi inxosi iswele primary health care, especially in rural areas. We do have problems in urban areas, but concentration should be more on rural areas. It is true, ihlahla azikwazi ukuyiprotect. Ilentuza ilwane azikwazi ukuyikhulumela. But now, funeka sikhumbuleni futhi ukuthi even those kids, you know, in the rural areas abakwazi ukuzikhulumela, abana voice. You get what I'm saying? So we can't be comparing ilentuza ilwane nama human beings. You know, for ukuze ilwane nehlahla ukuthi zibe khona, there must be people. So if these people they die at a tender age, you know, what's the use of le hlahla lezi nale ilwane lezi? I'm gonna give you a typical example. We used to have dinosaurs. Me, I for one, I haven't seen a dinosaur, but I know there was a dinosaur. You know, I'm living. I've grown to be where I am, you know, to this age. I haven't seen a dinosaur, and it hasn't affected my life at all. I don't see ama rhinos azoba ne influence ekhuliseni abantwana, or abantwana kuzoba ne problem babangakhula bangawazi ama rhinos. You know what I mean? Each and everything ikhona la emhlabeni. There's things that we didn't see. You know, back in the days, our ancestors, they saw them. We don't even know about their names, and we don't even know about their existence, you know. So as life revolves, life evolves, so things are changing. So we shouldn't be protecting our rhinos. I'm repeating the facts again. We shouldn't protecting in nation our rhinos at an expense of Abantuan.
The strong views that are raised by Linda in this episode resonate with a lot of people. Perhaps when you're one of them. Stay tuned. We'll be back after the break.
Debate is always good. Let's chat about it. Let's start. Debate is always good. Let's chat about it. Let's start.
Welcome back to the chat room. Today we're talking about animal conservation. Today on the chat room, Sibuzage, the question Uguti, how important is saving animals and nature when you also have human welfare to consider? Joining us in studio namhlanje is Ulinda Esimboniye in the insert before the break. We're also joined by Isobel Frye from Studies in Poverty and Inequality Institute, as well as Christine Kutch from the National Council of SPCA. We're also joined by Chief Libuani Matsila, who is from Sand Parks. Thank you very much for joining us. Butwam Linda, we watched your insert. Bengcela explain ukuthi Sizwile, you were talking about ukuthi you think we should focus on other things that we've got issues to solve in this country, basically poverty, etc. But a person would argue and say ukuthi as human beings, Nati, it is our responsibility to look after the trees, the plants, the animals, etc. What would you say to that?
It's true, I concur. I'm not saying we shouldn't focus on conserving nature and animals. But what I'm saying is, if we're gonna conserve nature and animals, if we do that and we forget about the human nature, who's gonna look after that nature if the very people we're talking about are gonna die at an early age?
Are we not putting more value in saving animals than the value in helping the human life or saving the human life? We're in a country where we've got a lot of poverty, and in the opening link, I mean, 4 billion, about 4 billion rands goes into an organization to help save the rhino, for example, whereas some people would argue that that money could be utilized in South Africa to help a lot of families, a lot of children, or put into education. What would your response be to that?
I'd love to know where that money goes, because if you look at the latest survey on corporate social investment, where money goes from business into charitable organizations, it's less than 1% going into animal welfare. So we're certainly not receiving that income. And we're trying very hard to put the point across that we do support communities. Helping animals isn't the end in itself, but there's a knock-on effect. So I can't answer where that money goes. What I can say is it's not coming to us.
Chief, can you help us there? I mean, there's an argument that, yes, good and well, there are all these organizations and initiatives like Saving the Rhino, but we are sitting with so many problems as human beings that we should be concentrating on, because the value of the human life is far more important. What would your answer be to that?
No, thanks a lot, Sarah. And from where I sit, I sympathize a lot with Linda's thinking. And I understand the emotions with which he raises these issues. Because you see, you must understand that we are dealing with the legacy of apartheid that removed Africans and black people in particular from these protected areas, the parks, to all over, including urban areas and areas that are not productive. Therefore, people lost livelihood, but they also lost the connection to the land. Now, when initiatives like Save the Rhino don't include people like Linda to understand and support, he raises these issues in the manner he's raising. So we've got to find common ground to make people understand why is it important to save the rhino. Now, if you look at a rhino, there are many benefits why you have to save the rhino. One is a cultural one, of the relationship between African cultures and animals like the rhino. For instance, a rhino is a totem for some people. Say in Venda, there are people, Makare, for instance, who use the rhino as a totem. So when that rhino is no longer in the wild, what happens to the pride of the people? Look at an elephant, the Ndlovu's Gajeni. What happens if an elephant is no longer there? That's one part. See, but there's an economic part which people don't understand. You see, if you look at a place like Kruger, which is under ourselves as sandparks, it generates a lot of income into the country. Part of that money goes back into the immediate communities that are there. But once you don't have a rhino, you don't have an elephant, people may stop going there. So I will look at a rhino as an employer. It's game rangers, people who must service the parks are from communities and they benefit. So for me, it's a bigger educational and awareness program to say everybody must understand where we come from.
Linda, your comment based on that?
What I'm saying is there's critical and issues of paramount importance that have to that we as a nation have to focus on.
So you're feeling, Uguti, there's not enough money that is pledged or put aside to help to address issues like poverty, etc. Isobel, can you answer Linda with regards to that? He feels that we shouldn't sideline the animals entirely, but we shouldn't put them as priority over people.
I think we need to take a step back and just consider the history of human rights. If you look at the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was passed after the Second World War, which is really a statement of saying there's a priority that needs to happen, and people are central to that. I mean, interestingly enough, in South Africa, the returning black and African soldiers, realizing that the 1948 Universal Declaration would not pertain to them, actually developed an African Claims Charter, which spoke to that, which is just an interesting piece of history. So we've recognized from the beginning that rights are fundamental and are critical. I do, however, think that one of the conversations we need to have in this country is how do people become more active? I think if you look at the spatial geographic divide, people are very isolated in certain clumps. And so you get activities, but they're very specific to socioeconomic conditions. So if you're in Everton, for instance, your activity might be about trying to make sure that the school grounds are clean. If you're in Parkview, your activity might be a jazz festival at Zoo Lake. So to my mind, the question is, how do we see those points of connection which connect us beyond that small pocket around us? Because when we do that, we can start seeing our interest not just in our own survival, but in the promotion of something which is larger, which is more glorious, which is an enjoyable country.
I think let's go back to the whole issue of rights. Coming back to you, Christine, is that I think the big argument amongst many South Africans is the fact that they feel that should human rights and the rights of animals be on the same level to begin with. I think that's where the argument starts, whereby people do feel that animal rights are considered to be on the same level as the rights of human beings.
Well, we're animal welfare, not animal rights. And we've never advocated that. We've never said that animals come first. But the SPCA movement would always emphasize that there's a link. It's holistic. And maybe just hopping slightly outside the argument, but I think it's relevant. Go back a few years and look at the outcry when it was introduced or put forward there was going to be legislation against smoking. Children in seat belts, plastic bags, and it's all died away and it's worked. What we're saying is there is progress. We're recognising the role of animals. Your introduction as well pointed out, I think you referred to a food chain, but a connection. That if a particular species is no longer with us, the next one who depends on it is going to be affected, and so on and so on. So everything from litter in the community to animal welfare through to human population and the community as a whole, I feel we all have individual responsibilities. You know, if I throw a plastic bag out of a vehicle window, which I would never do, but I've seen people do, if an animal chokes on it, it's not only the death of that animal, which is shocking, but if that animal's running in the road because it's got this thing on him, could cause an accident, could injure or kill humans. So we're saying there's a knock-on effect. But we've never said animals before humans, we are saying there's a link.
Okay, I'm going to go for a quick commercial break, but before, what I want us to talk about after the break is to concentrate more on how we can educate each other as a society, so that we know that there is a link, and we find out how we can actually, because Chief, you mentioned that there's a lot of education that is needed amongst South Africans as a whole, so that it's not a human rights versus animal rights, to realize that we all coexist and have a purpose. So all this and more after the break. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Debate is always good. Let's chat about it. Let's start. Debate is always good. Let's chat about it. Let's start.
Welcome back. Today on the chat room, we're talking nature conservation and asking the question, should we really concern ourselves with saving animals and nature? Remember, the debate is also happening on our social networks, so please do have a chat with us. We've touched on the issue of us as a community, or as South Africans. It's important for us to learn how important it is to coexist with animals, etc. But then I think we've had this debate now on a more intellectual level, and I think let's just bring it back to the grassroots and try and find out, why is it that we're even asking this question today? Can we then understand why a lot of people cannot understand the fact that their rights should be put above the rights of dogs and cats and other animals?
The magnitude of the problem requires a lot of funding, unfortunately. But government, of course, can't put money there.
Sure.
Much more. That's why you have to have donor funding. It looks like it's a lot. It's actually not a lot. If you look at the level of funding for charitable causes, it's billions and billions, much more than what is happening with the rhino. But you see, our campaign is that people must be part of this Save the Rhino campaign, and they must be made to understand the broader context within which it happens. People from the townships in particular need to come in numbers, so that we interact and have these discussions and begin to understand that human rights and environmental rights are one and the same. All of us have got a right to a safe environment, to a healthy environment, yes, right to clean water. Yeah. Well, where do you get clean water if you're not looking after natural resources?
Sure.
It's a good initiative, but I'm going to say to the chief, it doesn't resonate with someone who's sitting in a shack,
Why
who's
not?
hungry right now, because you're telling him about, preserving rhinos, trees and that, which is good. I understand where he's coming from, but now he's hungry. His baby's sick. He doesn't have money to take his baby to the hospital. You understand what I'm trying to say? What I'm saying is, if you're going to engage the community, with such, lessons or education, you also have to, bring people who are going to contribute to the same community. You can't be going to a hungry person, telling him that, you need to preserve rhinos while he's hungry. He's got problems. He's not going to even come to that, to that conference or whatever, because he's hungry. You need to, like I said before, you have to balance the scale. If you're going to bring such lessons to the location or to the rural areas, you also have to bring something, to change their lives.
Very interesting. Do these nature reserves contribute in helping the society around them or communities around them to address issues of poverty?
Yes, certainly there's a lot that we're doing. For instance, if I give you an example of Kruger or Mapungubwe National Park, but we need to, for urban areas, say in Gauteng, we need to make sure that those reserves, whether they are private or owned by government, need to begin to have interactive programs. But you need to realize that you can't look at national parks or protected areas as the solution for all the problems.
Sure.
We can contribute wherever we can, but there are other mandates by other government departments where they must come and address those kinds of problems.
Christine, in closing, how do you think we can begin to educate South Africans about the value of, or the importance of respecting the environment, acknowledging our ecosystem, and learning to know that each and every one of us have an importance and a value, and that's why we're all here?
it's been a great start today, and the fellow guests are also wonderful, can I call you resources, to carry on talking to. Our aim really would be to get the link out there. It's not one or the other. Animals are no, we're not saying they're of greater importance, we're saying there's a link. And funnily enough, it's a project we are starting to look at, hoping to work with and through the Department of Health, and also to get some corporates on board, because the message that's coming through very strongly during the programme is the exact message that we would like to get to all South Africans and say, hey, come on, work together. There's a link, there's a circle, and together we can do it. It would make such a difference.
It's so strange because I remember when I was at school, you get taught about the ecosystem. You grow up knowing about the link, but somewhere along the line, it changes. And then I have certain issues like Linda does and many other South Africans. And I think we need to find out when that change happens, that it actually doesn't happen. And programs like that will definitely assist in educating us. Linda, in closing?
Yeah, to add on what you just said, Sarah, we need to look at, we need to have a holistic approach, when dealing with such issues, because these are socio-economic issues.
Yeah.
You understand? Christine spoke about, the Table Mountain, the tourism and all of that. But now the thing is, the problem we have in our country is that we are sold ideas, that do not work for us. They not materialize at all. We are told that the World Cup is going to benefit the South Africans. Up to this date, we haven't seen anything. The Table Mountain is there, the nature reserves are there, but now we need to educate. I'm sorry to say this, the government, the people who are actually responsible, for taking care of such things. We need to educate them, not to be greedy, not to be capitalist, not to be ignorant, not to be naive, and to do their jobs, properly, then we will have a better country. Thank you.
So basically, they must deliver on the promises.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you everyone for coming through to the show today. Very interesting discussion. Well, that's all we have time for today. Aslanganin futhi evekini elilandelayo for more thought-provoking chat. Join us again next week, same time, same place. From me, Sarah Tabete, and the rest of the Chatroom team. Goodbye and God bless.